How's it going, people? Simon Slabber here, and this is Runescape Lore, where we look at the history of RuneScape itself. So today I think we're going to be showcasing Lucien. Now I'm sure many of you have heard of Lucien. He is a Mahjarrat, and one of the big named Mahjarrat. One of the big three, I guess you could call it. So let's get into it then. Lucien. Well, Lucien himself was, well, quite an extremely powerful Mahjarrat. And he was quite the skilled necromancer. He arrived in Gilnor with the rest of his Mahjarrat friends, and quite late in the game, I guess you could say, the 5th age. Throughout the time, he was planning to use the various elder artifacts to kind of mimic Zamorak and ascend into godhood, which is where you actually hear about him throughout the game. He does appear in a few quests, so yeah, quite well known. But what is this guy like? Well, here's a quote from him. "Do you know who you address? I am Lord Lucien of the Mahjarrat, master of 1,000 curses. Look upon my works, you mighty, and despair." So, yeah, you can kind of get it just from that quote, to be totally honest, that he is, well, fully confident in himself. Or arrogant, I suppose you could say. Lucien may well be called one of the most cruel and power-hungry characters to have walked Gilnor, though. His aspiration to attain godhood and search for power sources have made him much of a callous and careless Mahjarrat. He cares very little about his allies, which he seems to regard as tolerable until they have fulfilled their role. This is quite clearly illustrated when he simply laughed at his follower Sorok Magus after the latter's incarceration in Falador, and how he ignored his cousin's begging for aid in combat at the 18th Ritual of Rejuvenation. Lucien is known to have been especially cruel to his daughter, Moya. He regarded his daughter as a failed experiment due to her not being a full Mahjarrat, and has called the time he put into her creation as simply wasted. Even though he thought of her this way, she still served him loyally, and he treated his personal spy and assassin very poorly, not tolerating failure, frequently belittling her, and often threatening her with death or worse. His sheer hunger for power and betrayal of allies has ultimately proven to be a large factor in Lucien's eventual death. He did not allow Mavario to study the Stone of Jazz when he found it, and thus invoked the wrath of the Dragonkin by using it frequently. Nor did he care to accumulate support at the 18th Ritual of Rejuvenation, for some of his fellow Mahjarrat could have aided him in warding off the kin, but they had all turned against him after his betrayal of Zamorgul. It is likely that Lucien had not deemed it necessary, for he probably simply thought that he had sufficient divine power to overcome any obstacle that opposed him, Dragonkin or no. But as we know, this was quite arrogant of him, as eventually he was slaughtered by the Dragonkin themselves. So what about his skills then? Mr. Lucien. How strong is Lucien? Well, in physical combat, Lucien is pretty laughably weak, to be totally honest. During the Temple of Ikov, he appears as a frail old man, and teleports away after enduring only 1 life point worth of damage. Vigora, a former ally of Lucien, who was condemned to an eternity as a spirit by Zaros for his role as serving as one of Zamorak's principal bodyguards, commented that his efforts to lift a sword were amusingly pathetic. Well, despite his lack of strength during the quest though, it has been proved that he is far more powerful than he leads to believe though. His initial unimposing physique appears to be the result of a spell or years of isolation. Lucien is however capable of summoning vast amount of undead, and these armies are large enough to besiege cities, and has even been rumoured to possess the magical ability to conceal divine artifacts, as well as assume control over them. So yeah, not exactly weak. He is also able to read minds and even slightly control them, as shown when you try to kill him without an Armadil pendant. He is also incredibly intelligent, unlike some Mahjarrat which can be mentioned, such as Khazad. Lucien appears to be fairly learned in the ancient laws, particularly where valuable artifacts are concerned, throughout a massive amount of research, I'd assume. As Lucien is a Mahjarrat, he is far more dangerous than any human though. He has lived over 6,000 years since the arrival in Gielinor from Runescape, and has the ability to enter a state of healing that will repair all but the most severe of wounds. He likely possesses multiple physical forms as well, as do most Mahjarrat that. But it would appear that his primary form is an intimidating lich. When empowered by an Elder artifact, he can summon a considerable amount of beasts without even showing one bit of exhaustion. It is assumed that he faces no limitations in summoning as such, suggesting that he may quite simply have mastered the secrets therein. His trademark spell, a black ball of energy and dark skulls that emerge from his body, can incinerate opponents where they stand. Lucien is also able to easily deflect an attack like he did with Hazelmere. The Staff of Armadyl magnifies the power of its user so much that it impressed Mahjarrat very much, who stated in his research notes thus: "I steel myself at this thought. His powers have increased significantly since he acquired the staff, and I remember the stench of death and overwhelming magic that surrounds him. The degree of his spellcasting and incantations have started to border on the insane." Mahjarrat also wrote that Lucien is able to perform the incantation of Daemonicus Arboris, the dark art of binding demons to a perpetual state of simultaneous torment as well as healing, which was considered to be impossible. He showed off this ability when he summoned 2 tormented demons to fight his adversary. He refers to the demons as lowly, despite their humongous strength. Lucien also has some experience with the Shadow Realm itself, for he used it to conceal the entrance to the cave he kept the Stone of Jazz in, under the ritual site. So all in all, although initially when you first meet him he does seem rather pathetic and immensely weak, but perhaps that is actually true of his physical form, when he tries to use physical attacks for example. However, when it comes to using his magical abilities, he is a very, very powerful Mahjarrat, especially when he gained the use of the Staff of Armadyl as well as the Stone of Jazz, which multiplied his strength over and over. But anyway, let's get into his actual history then, shall we? That's enough about his personality and skills. Let's see the story of Lucien. So, as with the others, they did arrive from Runescape and originally lived on Runescape. This was with many of the tribes of Mahjarrat, and it was here that they would live to survive the elements of the destructive power of the legendary Mother Ma, an elder god. Mother Ma created their race, and whom they would prevent from wreaking havoc on Runescape through the rituals of rejuvenation and innovation. Although at least one Mahjarrat regarded her as a mere myth and the rituals as superstitious traditions, due to the constant conflict with neighbouring tribes such as the Mahjarrat, as well as the frequent sacrifices of the ritual, the Mahjarrat tribe never counted more than a few hundred members and was ruled kratocratically. However, this was to change in the Second Age of Gielinor, when 2 demigods by the name of Ictharion and Amascut travelled to Runescape in order to recruit the Mahjarrat to fight off the Zerosian invaders of their homeland. This was due to the Caridian-Zerosian War. Upon hearing of this though, some Mahjarrat opposed the proposal while others simply agreed to go, causing a large battle to break out. Both Azanadra and Temical argued that the Mahjarrat should go with Ictharion, and Karshai was one of the most excited at the prospect of leaving Runescape, as Gielinor is a much kinder realm than Runescape was. Eventually, after the death of one by the name of Salisad and the sacrifice of Arborgul, those in favour of travelling to Gielinor emerged victoriously, and the entire Mahjarrat tribe accompanied the 2 gods to Gielinor. It was there that Lucien aided the Menethite warriors in driving back the Zerosian army with success. During this time, they were simply known as the stern judges of Ictharion. However, as the Menethites had almost ensured the victory a couple of years later, the Mahjarrat Sliske, who had got into a feud with Ictharion over his methods in battle, approached the Zerosian legate, the Chthonian demon named Duke Ceres, and made arrangements to desert the Menethites and join Zarus' side. It was at this point that most of the Mahjarrat actually convened at the fortress of Karadet, and soon emerged, and they decided to join arms with the Zerosians, proceeding to slaughter the retreating Menethite armies. Upon seeing this, the god Temekan, father of Icthrarin and Amascut, swiftly interfered by sacrificing himself, his armies, as well as half of his empire to repel the Zerosians. He used his powers to create a fire. And not just any fire, it was a gigantic fire, which eventually created a massive explosion, turning half of the empire into sheer desert wasteland, as well as obliterating his own army as well as most of the Zerosians. Of the approximately 500 Mahjarrat that were present, less than a fifth survived the explosion thanks to Azanadra, who quickly erected a magical barrier for protection. Lucien was amongst the few that managed to survive, and to join the remainder of the Zerosian army on the march to Farinthi. He was soon given the rank of tribune in the army of Zaros. Amongst the Mahjarrat's substantial numbers was Zamorak, a warlord who proved his strength on the battlefield countless times. He soon rose to the position of general, making him one of the most influential individuals in Zaros' army. Yet, despite his favour with the god, Zamorak had long silently plotted against the Empty Lord himself, and had already gained a considerable following. Amongst his followers was Lucien, a Mahjarrat who craved power and ancient knowledge above all else. Through a long series of events, the Staff of Armadyl eventually fell into Zamorak's hands. Believing a god weapon could have the strength to overthrow Zaros, he led an army to Zaros' fortress and assaulted it. Using Persia's duplicate journal to hide his thoughts from Zaros, he and his following approached the castle under the pretense of discussing war plans. It was here that Zamorak eventually attacked Zaros in his own chamber, whilst his allies such as Lord Dragon and such fought with Zaros' bodyguards outside. If Lucien had not been otherwise preoccupied, he most likely would have fought alongside the rebels. Fortunately for the rebels, this was not necessary, seeing as the Saradominus mage Dalak had, upon hearing about Zamorak's possession of the staff from Lanissa, placed an enchantment upon the staff itself, which would make it undetectable by Zaros. Through pure luck, Zamorak did indeed manage to impale the Empty Lord and stole some of his godly powers, and it was here that Zaros slowly faded from existence, leaving his body and changing from the realm itself, cursing all those who aided Zamorak in his rebellion. Lucien, his blood flowing with magical powers, supposedly, was unaffected by this curse. It seems that he was the one who discovered the Saradominus spy Lanissa, though he knew she could come in useful at another time. The gods, despite their rivalry, supposedly banished Zamorak for slaying one of their own. Lucien was amongst those that went into hiding in order to ensure his survival. Zamorak's supposed banishment, however, was not to last. Even though they say that Zamorak was banished by the other gods, in actual fact, it is believed that the demons themselves found Zamorak unconscious within the throne room, and took him back to their homeworld in order to fight the rebellion as he promised. But it wasn't long after when Zamorak managed to fully recover, and actually quelled the rebellion in the demon realms. He soon returned to Gielinor, and rallied behind him an army with which he could conquer the world of Gielinor. Many other gods had also gained power, and soon a series of wars would engulf the world for thousands of years. This war would bring it to the brink of destruction. Upon Zamorak's return, Lucien soon returned to Zamorak's side, using his necromancy abilities to assist his lord. As few documents actually survived the wars, little is known of Lucien's exact role during this time though. However, when Guthix was awoken and ended the God Wars, Lucien began to operate silently, secretly working to aid Zamorak within his return to power. It's revealed in the While Guthix Sleeps quest that Lucien views himself as the sheer successor of Zamorak, and he is willing to betray the god of chaos in order to attain control over the Mahjarrat. Shortly after the 17th Ritual of Rejuvenation, Lucien was informed by his daughter Moya that somebody tried to move the ritual marker. After a discussion with Zamorgul, he deduced that only a Mahjarrat would actually try to take this stone, and after checking which Mahjarrat were absent from the ritual, he soon sent Moya to go and find Bilrak. Lucien heard very little from Mahjarrat for almost 500 years, and what little he did hear was sheer disappointment. But in the year 168 of the 5th Age, Mahjarrat, now an old woman, informed Lucien that she had found a peninsula dubbed Daemonheim a year later, with a large dungeon complex ruled over by someone called Bill. Mahjarrat suspected that this Bill would be Bilrak, and ventured to the bottom of the complex to prove so to her master, where she found the missing ritual marker, warped and corrupted by the nature of the floor it was found. And, alongside it, she also found Bilrak. However, at this point, he seemed to have completely lost sanity. Mahjarrat told Lucien that she found Bilrak, and he asked Mahjarrat to either try to kill him or bring him to him to be used as a sacrifice in the upcoming ritual. Mahjarrat, whether by her own choice or not, seemed to join Bilrak's cause, and Lucien did not hear any more from Mahjarrat for a long time to come. For 2,000 years, Lucien would remain relatively quiet though, forgotten by most save the Guardians of Armadyl. However, he was far from finished. During the 5th Age, a magical and powerful artifact that is now known as the Shield of Arav, which allowed its bearer great power over all races, was broken in half in a feud between two gangs. Hearing of this, Lucien started amassing an undead army, as with the shield broken, its power would no longer be able to actually stop his invasion, and he wished to claim the shield for himself. In the year 154 of the 5th Age, Lucien used his army to lead a massive assault upon the city of Varrock, the home of the shield itself. Assisted by powerful mages such as Solus Delagar, Lucien's undead army seemed unstoppable. But Varrock, even without the shield, was still supplied with a massive amount of runes, and was able to defeat Lucien's army relatively easily. In fact, he was defeated so quickly that the majority of the population never even learned his name, and only a few, namely the Temple Knights, ever fully understood the attack. After this incident, Lucien fled back into the shadows, although this was merely the beginning of his search for powerful artifacts, and he began to set his sights on artifacts even more powerful than that of the shield. In the year 169 of the 5th Age, Lucien enlisted the assistance of an adventurer. At the time, he was assuming the form of an incredibly frail man, who covered his face with a hood. Not telling the adventurer who he was, he asked them to retrieve an ancient artifact known as the Staff of Armadyl, from a temple just found north of the East Ardougne. The adventurer took one of two routes. They were said to either have taken the staff from the Guardians of Armadyl and delivered it to Lucien himself, or they learned of his true identity and attempted to kill him, only for him to teleport away from them. However, the efforts of the adventurer who guarded the staff were still in vain. Lucien recruited a mage by the name of Mahjarrat, and he was able to steal the staff from the Guardians of Armadyl themselves, as said in a note handed to the adventurer by the Guardians of Armadyl, Idria. He seems to be leading them in their effort to retake the staff and, as a consequence, ensure that Lucien does not reach the state of godhood. After his successful theft of the staff, Lucien once again enlisted the help of Mahjarrat and Darv, and sent them to search for an object that goes by the name of the Stone of Jazz, which we know to be an elder artifact as well. With the stone, the Mahjarrat believed that he would be able to attain godhood, gain leadership of the Mahjarrat, and eventually succeed Zamorak as the new god of chaos. Mahjarrat and his intellectually lacking assistant eventually started investigating the Dorgush Khan's south dungeon, believing that a stone may be found nearby. In the early year of 169 of the 5th Age, Lucien attempted to establish an alliance with the necromancer Mahjarrat by the name of Zamoragul, who was actually also his cousin. Sharath Turk, the latter's gargoyle ambassador, revealed that Lucien was also in search of an unknown artifact, and that an alliance would be beneficial to both sides. Zamorgul dismissed the stone as a non-existent fairy tale and decided to simply continue with his attack on Varrock, thus rejecting the proposal. This refusal invoked a form of anger towards Zamorgul inside Lucien, which would later prove disastrous for Lucien himself. Soon though, Lucien shed his frail form and reveals himself to be a very powerful Mahjarrat capable of raising the undead later in the year of 169 of the 5th Age, while sending Rovario around the world to seek the stone out. Lucien established a waterproof spy network himself that allowed him to be informed of everything that happened in important locations. A group of disguised spies were placed within Draenor village, and Lucien hired lots of mercenaries as well. Finally, he made a deal with Lord TheCompleteRS, and whoever the leader of the Dark Warriors fortress is, securing the aid of the Kinshra as well as the Dark Warriors. In the catacombs of the Kinshra, many dozens of elite Kinshra shoulders and elite Dark Warriors, mages and archers were trained. They were overseen by another of Lucien's associates, a mysterious wizard that went by the name of Dark Squall. Inevitably, Lucien's schemes leaked out and the underground druid organization Cruxaqual finally heard about his spies, as well as his ambitions to rule Gielinor. The Cruxaqual immediately took action. They told Radamus Urkel, Grand Vizier of the Legends Guild, that they needed superb adventurers for a mission on Karamja, not telling him the truth for his own good. This turned to be a smart move, because when this adventurer accepted the job and was told the real story by the Cruxaqual's leader, Theris Semphire, they were immediately attacked by 2 assassins of Lucien. Both of these assassins, though, were actually defeated. However, the adventurer was then sent to find Movario's base, where they found about his notes as well as learned of his mission. They were then asked to make contact with Idria, a marshal of the Guardians of Armadyl. At the Guardians' base, however, the adventurer witnessed a surprise attack by Lucien's mercenary once again, who, inevitably, eventually slaughtered the Guardians. The adventurer, however, managed to defeat them, and the surviving Guardians redirected them to Idria, who was hiding within the Forester's Arms within Seer's village. The Cruxaqual and Idria subsequently moved to Falador, where Sir Tiffy Cashin allowed them to use the White Knight's castle as a base of operations. An alliance was soon formed between the Cruxaqual, Tharisk being their representative, the Guardians of Armadyl represented by Idria, and the Temple Knights represented by their priest, Acrase Collium. The alliance's sole goal became to exterminate Lucien from the face of the earth. The alliance recruited a band of 8 extremely powerful heroes to apprehend the Mahjarrat. This was Karalak Menarus, overseer of the Warriors Guild, Sloan, the Master of Strength, Gommel, Tall Doorman of the same guild, the 3 Slayer Masters of Turiel, Mazgna, and Duradel, Syrisus, a combat-addicted adventurer, and finally Hazelmere the Ethereal, a legendary and extremely powerful gnome. The adventurer was also sent to rescue Acrase's assistant, Silith, who had been captured by Dark Squall whilst infiltrating the catacombs after one of Lucien's spies, captured by the adventurer, had revealed his leader to be the Squall under the influence of a truth serum. Upon freeing him from Drael, the adventurer discovered that Dark Squall was no less than Surok Magus, the leader of the Dagonai. They quickly planted a teleorb into Surok's pocket and teleported to Falador before they could be harmed. The adventurer disguised themselves as Surok, and Tharisk performed a teleswitch, locking Surok within a cell in Falador and teleporting the disguised adventurer into Surok's office. It was there that they used a special spell to teleport to Lucien's camp south of the ritual site where they witnessed his display of power. Using the ancient spell by the name of Ekithat Nunc Rias Zanka Tadarius, Lucien summoned a dozen of undead heroes to fill his army, and the adventurer's identity was then compromised as Lucien noticed that Surok was really the adventurer, and, immensely empowered by the Staff of Armadyl, fired a powerful spell at them. The spell, however, was evaded and hit 2 elite Kinshra knights instead, immediately incinerating them into dust. It was at that point the octet of heroes arrived and they took the fight to Lucien. Mazgna Haralak took on the undead whilst Duradel and Sloane approached the Mahjarrat. Before they could even think about hitting him though, Lucien killed them with no effort whatsoever. Hazelmeal charged a very powerful attack, sending a barrage of crystals at Lucien, but where almost any other opponent would have succumbed to this, the crystal simply bounced off Lucien. Syrisus and Turiel each attacked Lucien, but before they could touch him, their weapons broke by Lucien's solid force field. As Gommel joined them, Lucien fired yet another spell, obliterating the 3 warriors before reducing the ancient gnome to ashes. Enjoying the sight of what he's done, Lucien takes his undead soldiers and teleports away, leaving Masna and Haralak the sole survivors. Thus, Hazelmere's vision, in which the adventurer wore colours of evil but fought for good, and where Hazelmere did battle and died, was fulfilled. The Alliance then proceeded to send the adventurer to the Tears of Guthic's Cavern, where Movario had been doing research. The adventurer managed to descend into the chasm before Movario, and they discovered a huge as well as ancient temple, which was shown to be towards Guthic's. After unlocking a massive door, they found the very Stone of Jazz on a pedestal, and upon touching it, released a vision of a Fremennik warrior becoming a lunar mage due to the stone, and then the stone's guardian, a balance elemental created by Guthix, was summoned. The adventurer defeated the elemental, and Movario and Dav arrived to steal the stone away. It was then, however, Lucien himself teleported in. He revealed that he intends to use the Stone of Jazz to undermine Zamorak's authority, as well as raise himself up as the leader of the Mahjarrat. He remarked that he would use the Stone of Jazz's ability to regulate life forces in order to enslave the kingdom of Gillinor, as well as re-establish Mahjarrat authority within the realm. At the ancient temple of Guthix, he teleported away with the stone, even though Movario did indeed warn him that his research on the artifact was not yet complete. It was here that he also casted Demonicus Aborus, summoning 2 powerful tormented demons to finish off the adventurer, stating that in order to be worthy of being one of his followers, you must be able to defeat at least one of them. With the help of Idria and a power boost from the stone, the adventurer managed to slay the demons. Movario then secretly left Lucien's service out of repulsion of how he treated such an ancient artifact. Lucien, however, at this point had won. He now owns 2 Elder artifacts. Meanwhile, the slaying of the Balance Elemental and the abuse of the stone released the Dragonkin, defenders of the stone, and enslaved to do so by the Elder God Jazz. It was now that the Dragonkin themselves began the hunt for the Lucien, the false user, as it was their sole duty. Later on in that same year, Lucien soon participated within the 18th Ritual of Rejuvenation. When the adventurer was sent by the Kuruqual to teleport the stone to Falador, they accidentally touched it, triggering Lucien's alarm system to teleport them out. They met with Certification on the surface, and they, along with Ali the Wise, a battalion of Temple Knights and Akrasay, arrived at the ritual site near Gorok. It was here that they were ambushed by General Khazad, who revealed Ali to be one of the Zerosian Mahjarrat by the name of Wahisiatl. After Khazad's defeat though, the group approaching the ritual marker, where Lucien appeared and began to mock and as well as attack the group. As Tiffy called in Idria with reinforcements, Lucien summoned 4 enhanced Ice Titans to finish off the group while dueling Wahisiatl himself. He had also planned to summon an army of ice monsters by the name of Glaikers, but these had been killed by Kuradel, vindictive daughter of Duradel, whom Lucien had recently slain. After the Titans' defeat, Lucien became angrier and summoned about 20 ice demons, ordering them to destroy his adversaries. It was now that Sliske then arrived, and with lots of effort and with the help of Sliske's wights, the Barrows brothers, the demons were eventually defeated. Inaqua then soon teleported in and demanded a vote in the choice for the sacrifice. But Lucien contradicted her, stating that the most powerful gets to choose the sacrifice. It was then that Akthanakos arrived, followed by Zamoragul, who attempted to convince his cousin to sacrifice his Zerosian. As Anadra, Khazad and Azil finally arrived to the scene, and a quarrel soon began over whom was to be sacrificed. As the Mahjarrat were arguing, Lucien angrily silenced his kin, shouting that they were all weak, before revealing he had already decided on whom to sacrifice. He soon pulls up Jalan in his frozen state from out of the ground, declaring that he will be the one to be sacrificed because he was the weakest of all, and because of his attempt to rejuvenate himself without participating within the ritual, by hiding himself beneath the caverns of the ritual site. Mahjarrat rejected this and eventually attacked Lucien, insisting that he be sacrificed due to the threat he posed, which soon caused a fight between the Zarosian and the Zamorakian Mahjarrat. Zamorgul called Sharaturk with zombies, but these were swiftly defeated by Sliskay's posse. He then summoned Arav, but the adventurer freed him from Zamorgul's curse using his heart. And soon after he was released from Zamorgul's control, Arav went berserk and sent flurry after flurry of attacks towards Zamorgul. At this point, he was clearly outmatched, and not able to withstand the attacks of both Arav as well as Adanadra, and thus he begged his cousin for help. And, due to Zamorgul refusing Lucien's proposal years before, Lucien refused to help him, however more focused on his own problems. And it was this which prompted Zamorgul to turn on him, and in doing so he managed to convince the rest of the Mahjarrat to do the same. And soon enough, all the Mahjarrat began to attack Lucien, but he managed to hold them all off until the time for the ritual arrived. Lucien soon ceased battle and obliterated Jalan, thus rejuvenating all Mahjarrat. After being returned to full power, Adanadra used several beacons he positioned previously to summon Zarus' power and deal 2 devastating blows to Lucien. This prompted him to bring out the Stone of Jazz. He proclaimed his status as a god and prepared to exterminate all Zarosians. However, Lucien tried to use the stone. He accidentally summoned the Dragonkin Guardians, and they soon demanded that he release the stone. Lucien defied the Dragonkin, and a fight between Lucien and the Guardians of Jazz soon began. Lucien at first did indeed seem to be winning this fight when he knocked back the first opponent to attack Sithva. He then knocked the other one to the floor with the Staff of Armadil. As Lucien soon prepared to impale him, Strithsath, another Dragonkin, managed to pull him away, forcing Lucien to drop his staff, before also being pulled to the ground by Lucien's massive strength in the latest retaliation. Lucien's seeming victory did not last though, as he looked down on the Dragonkin's bodies. Sarkurth, who had not yet been seen, sneaked up behind Lucien, took hold of the staff, and hit Lucien over the head from behind, shattering the staff's orb in the process. Lucien soon fell to the ground, and before he could even do anything, Sarkurth impaled Lucien in the chest with the staffs. With a loud cry of agony, the false user's life was soon ended. The Dragonkin made a warning to the others, and revealed their intention of destroying the cities before flying off with the shaft of the staff. It was after his death, Lucien's body was simply just left lying on the ground, and he was not mourned by a single one of his former Mahjarrat allies, not even by his cousin Zamorgul, who merely stated "good riddance" after his death. So all in all, I guess Lucien's life story is pretty much a tale of greed. He's pretty damn powerful, and I would say he probably looked up to Zamorak to some extent. And simply because his magical powers were immensely powerful, he was probably fairly arrogant. So when Zamorak was banished after the end of the Third Era, he probably, instead of trying to look for Zamorak or a way to free Zamorak to allow him back into the world, most likely probably look for a way to actually he himself become a god instead, and take the place of Zamorak. And it was there where his plan started, and at the same time started to end his life. He gained the 2 Elder Artifacts, gained immense power, which probably very closely did manage to get him towards godhood. He couldn't have been far away. But at the same time, thinking of himself as immensely powerful and due to his own arrogance, didn't bother researching the stone completely and didn't find out about the Dragonkin. And at the same time, believing the rest of the Mahjarrat and everyone else to be beneath him, looked down on them all. And it was due to this that he shunned his cousin Zamorgul. Is probably that sole item that actually caused his downfall. If he did actually keep friends with Zamorgel and kept their relationship healthy, he may very well have managed to attain godhood as well as fight back against the Dragonkin to some extent. And maybe his plan would have succeeded and maybe he'd still be alive. But there we go. Can't change history. So with that said, I hope you all enjoyed. That was the lore on Lucien, one of the most powerful Mahjarrat that we know of. So yeah, until next time people, I will catch you all later. Have a good one.